From BBC Learning English, this is Learning English from the News, our podcast about the news headlines.
In this programme, mass shooting at ancient Mexican pyramids.
Hello, I'm Becca.
And I'm Phil.
In this programme, we look at one big news story and the vocabulary in the headlines that will help you understand it.
You can find all the vocabulary and headlines from this episode, as well as a worksheet on our website, bbclearningenglish.com.
So, let's hear more about this story.
A lone gunman attacked tourists at Mexico's historic Teotihuacan pyramids. One person was killed and at least 13 people were injured. The shooter then killed himself.
Teotihuacan is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the most visited tourist attractions in the country.
While some concerns have been raised over the number of tourists likely to visit the country for this summer's Football World Cup, attacks on tourists of this kind are very rare in the country.
Let's have our first headline. This is from El País, a Spanish newspaper. Teotihuacan shooting leaves 2 dead and 3 wounded.
And that headline again from El País, a Spanish newspaper. Teotihuacan shooting leaves 2 dead and 3 wounded.
This headline refers to the numbers of deaths and injuries reported in the very first official statement before we knew the scale of the incident. Here we're going to learn the word wounded.
The verb wound means to injure someone, and it usually refers to an injury caused by something breaking the skin, like a knife or, in this case, bullets from a gun.
We usually use the verb wound to talk about the result of aggressive, violent attacks. We sometimes hear the wounded to refer to a group of people hurt in an attack.
There's also a noun, wound, and this is the injury that someone has on their body. As well as the result of violent attacks, we can also talk about wounds in a medical context, such as wounds from surgery.
Wound is used to talk about serious, often life-threatening injuries. We wouldn't use wound to talk about a minor cut from a fall.
We can also use wounded metaphorically to talk about being hurt emotionally. For example, he felt wounded after the breakup of his relationship.
We've had wounded, injured, especially by something breaking your skin.
For example, the crash left 50 people wounded.
This is Learning English from the News, our podcast about the news headlines. Today we're talking about the deadly gun attack at Mexico's Teotihuacan pyramids.
The murdered tourist has been identified as a Canadian national.
The Mexican government has said that 13 people aged between 6 and 61 had been treated in hospital as a result of the incident.
Others injured in the attack are reported to be from Colombia, Russia, Brazil, and the US, as well as a further Canadian national.
And that's what our next headline is about. This headline is from The Guardian, a British newspaper. Canadian woman killed after gunman opens fire at Mexico's Teotihuacan.
And that headline again from The Guardian, a British newspaper. Canadian woman killed after gunman opens fire at Mexico's Teotihuacan.
We're going to learn the phrase open fire. It means to start shooting.
Open fire is often used in news reports about gun violence. As well as at, we also use the preposition on to identify the victim. So we might hear about soldiers opening fire on their enemy, or in this example, the gunman opened fire on tourists who were visiting Teotihuacan.
Fire in this expression means gunfire. A similar expression that you will also hear is return fire, and this is when people start shooting back at someone who was shooting them. For example, the police returned fire on the attacker.
We've had open fire, start shooting.
For example, the guards opened fire on the intruder.
This is Learning English from the News from BBC Learning English. We're talking about the attack on tourists at Teotihuacan.
The attacker has been named as 27-year-old Julio Cesar Hasso Ramirez.
An AI-generated image showing the shooters from an American mass shooting in 1999, together with Ramirez, was found by police in his bag.
The US shooting happened exactly 27 years earlier.
On the 20th of April, 1999, 13 people were killed in an attack at Columbine High School in Colorado.
It has been suggested that Ramirez was inspired by this attack.
And our next headline is about this.
This headline is from Hindustan Times, an Indian newspaper. Mexico shooting at Teotihuacan pyramids. First details on suspect as chilling Columbine link emerges.
And that headline again from Hindustan Times, an Indian newspaper. Mexico shooting at Teotihuacan pyramids. First details on suspect as chilling Columbine link emerges.
This headline is about the possibility that the Columbine attack inspired this incident. We're going to learn the word chilling.
The adjective chilling comes from the verb chill. Now, the literal meaning of this verb, chill, means to make something cold. But this headline is using chilling as a metaphor. Think about how uncomfortable cold can make you feel. Your hairs stand on end or you shiver. Bad news can make you feel a similar way. So we describe it as chilling.
A story or piece of information can be described as chilling if it's frightening, distressing, or it makes you feel uneasy. Here, the fact that the attacker appears to have been influenced by the Columbine murders in 1999 is seen as distressing.
Any piece of information that suggests something bad will happen in future can be described as chilling. For example, reports of violent crime or threats of nuclear war could be chilling.
We've had chilling, frightening or distressing.
For example, the chilling reality is that these violent incidents are hard to stop.
That's it for this episode of Learning English from the News. We'll be back next week with another news story.
And if you've enjoyed this programme, why not try our documentary series, Our World in English, which you can find on our website, bbclearningenglish.com. Bye for now.
Goodbye.